Engaging in this medium for as long as I have, you come across a multitude of names of those who are said to be the best authors in the game. Toriyama, Inoue, Oda, Tagashi, Takahashi, the list goes on and spans across different decades of time, as a lot of these people are still working till this day. Yet one thing that all of these authors have in common is that they have created a classic. One series that no matter how much time has passed or how many new fans of the medium come to be, still manage to move the masses like no other. It's not something that any author can do and truly deserves a bit of respect, all things considered. Now last fall, I came to learn of another popular name that I had not been able to get around to till recently with Naoki Urasawa. Pluto being another one of his works that was also a giant nod in the direction of Astro Boy received an anime adaptation on Netflix. Among the immense anticipation for a multitude of anime at the time, I really made sure to not let this show go by, as the amount of people keeping tabs on it was nothing to sneeze at. Overall, I'd say that I enjoyed myself, and I left with an impression that can only be described as thought-provoking. A lot of the themes in the show really made you think when it came to AI rights and human conflict involving them. It was a very nuanced story, one dealing with revenge and anger as well as the cruelty of war, and from this introduction into the writing style of Urasawa, I came to understand why there was so much appeal for this author. However, I didn't want to simply stop here, as seeing more of his works would allow me to really gain the full picture of the type of author they are. After doing a little research and getting some input from close peers, I landed on what would arguably be said to be his best work, being Monster. The critically acclaimed early 2000s anime, pushing up to a 74 episode count, was my next big journey coming off of Madoka Magic. It helped that I was already a huge fan of the investigation-like stories, and with an incredible dub behind it as well, I found myself glued to the screen as the show immediately demanded your attention with the cruel reality of politics mandating the value of human life. Dr. Tenma, who I came to learn that his name is a reoccurring choice among multiple stories, is a man who strives to be an example of what it means to be a true doctor. While already talented alongside being engaged to the director's daughter, he is somebody who truly could have had what would seem like the dream life. However, morals are always going to be challenged by what one may not be able to control, and in this story's case, it's not only those in a higher power, but also PR or politics. See, reputation plays a huge role in ensuring a company's longevity. In the eyes of the consumer and investors, the results are the only thing that matters. In a doctor's case, you of course want to save as many people as possible, but another layer onto that can also be the position or status of that said person. Early on, Monster introduced a very conflicting issue, with Tenma being pulled away to save the life of an opera singer who came after a Turkish man who had already been brought in at an earlier point. It's an unfair situation that ends up leaving the wife of said man a widow, but for the hospital another boost for PR. The one thing she demanded to know from Tenma kept replaying over and over in his head: why didn't you operate on my husband? It left Tenma speechless, because the unfortunate answer being that her husband's life was not nearly important as the opera singer's when it came to protecting the hospital's reputation. It's this situation that awakens a new point of view within Tenma. To ignore position and prioritize the lives of men equally, that is the backbone of who Dr. Kenzo Tenma is. It's a personal decision that would be considered bold and inferior to any of the director's orders. Yet it's something he chose to stick with, and once again he was met with a choice that would test this very ideal not much longer after the first. This time, a young boy with a gunshot wound to the head versus the mayor. Again, politics making its way to the front, as naturally you would assume that the one who mandates order would be prioritized compared to some young orphan. Nobody was prepared for this new point of view, and Tenma stood on business even knowing that his actions would have consequences. His fiancée, momentum to be promoted, credibility, all stripped from him for doing what he believed was right. Going against the momentum is never going to be something that yields a result where both sides can win. In Tenma's case, he wasn't just up against one person, but rather all of those who called the shots. When you say it out loud, it sounds insane to be punished for saving the life of the person who came in first. Doctors work to save as many lives as possible, but in reality, even sometimes they fail or cannot simply do it all. To fail is also to be human, as we are not a perfect species in the slightest. The immense backlash left Tenma broken, but what kept him together was the fact that the young boy would recover. It would have have been nothing short of an insult to not only himself, but the tears of the Turkish woman had he turned his back once more on what should have been deemed the right thing to do. It goes without saying that Tenma had every right to be angry for the amount of backlash he had received. It's an inconceivable thought to have imagined just how much he would lose for sticking up for himself. Yet with all this set up and establishing the type of setting we would be dealing with, the real stage was being built slowly in the background. There's a phrase by medieval writer Walter Map that I think sums up the first 2 episodes of the series. No good deed goes unpunished, and in Tenma's case, this was applied in more ways than one.
What they say, I am not wrong. He is. He tells me there's a flaw in my character. Well, what about him? He says he's a doctor, but he's just a greedy bastard. Bastard. Bastard! He'd be better off dead!
During the creation process for this video, I came across an interesting thread discussing a core similarity between Monster and the story of Frankenstein. That similarity being the fact that both antagonists are man-made monsters. Unknowingly to Dr. Tenma, his own desire to treat lives equally would unintentionally release an entity of chaos back into civilization. Of course, it wasn't without payback, as that young boy would go to kill all of those who stood against Dr. Tenma. Their cause of death, candy with muscle relaxer. That same candy spotted earlier in episode 2. Additionally, that same night, the young boy and his sister would both go missing. This immediately put Tenma under suspicion because he would be the only one to truly benefit from such untimely deaths, but without enough evidence, there can be no conviction. A case gone cold, but a promising doctor's life back on track, and as blissful as life could have remained, the case would soon come to be relevant once more. To put it simply, the past never dies, and from a chaotic situation that led to chasing down one of his patients led Tenma face to face with that very boy he saved so long ago. Except this time, the circumstances were much different. That boy we ended up coming to know as Johan, and is also the person who fit the description of the monster that Tenma's patient had described. Their reunion a short and bloody one in which Johan would kill that patient given his use had been received. Confession spoken without hesitation and murderous intent cloaked behind such a calm tone. Tenma could do nothing but watch as the boy he gambled everything to save once had come back as somebody that may have been better off deceased in the first place. In a matter of minutes, he once again disappeared among society the same way he did years ago. Between the shock of the truth alongside another person he could not save lying right in front of him, you can imagine the plethora of emotions Tenma was feeling. Why did it turn out this way? Why is Johan the way he is? What could have created such a monster? I never wanted it to be like this. The cherry on top, Inspector Lunge, being one of the best characters in the show, was once again pushing the issue, as this case reignited the fire that was put out years ago because of the lack of clues. Once again, Tenma was a prime suspect, and this time it's something he cannot ignore, as the truth is very much out there. Typically when starting a new anime, people abide by the 3-episode rule, but in just 4 episodes, Monster managed to set up a journey for a man whose medical oath was challenged by the very patient he sought to save. An extremely captivating exposition that left so many questions, and naturally both myself being the audience and Tenma pursued the natural route when you have questions. You go find those answers. In life, there are those who run away from the truth and those who face it head on. Tenma knew that he couldn't pretend like Johan wasn't out there causing God knows what type of harm towards others. As a doctor, it'd be the equivalent of ignoring the lives of people who could be saved. I found myself quickly on board with the direction his character was taken. A man on the run, a drifter refusing to stay in one place too long, constantly having to avoid authorities while in the pursuit of answers and still managing to apply his medical expertise where those who are human could use it. The biggest hurdle that had to first be overcome was finding somebody who knew of Johan's existence. See, it's one thing to be considered a monster, but when you're considered somebody who always leaves no trace as if he were a ghost, it allowed Johan to be extremely elusive. With the aid of a blind man who knew of Johan but could never see him, the two were able to discuss the whereabouts of the younger sister Anna, known now as Nina Fortner. At this point, with so much time passing, we see her much brighter, pursuing a college degree and even working a part-time job. Yet to be functional doesn't always mean to be healed, as her amnesia stuck with her from childhood. Despite the Fortners' best efforts to treat her as if she were their biological child, the past never dies. There were a lot of things reminding her that she is missing the memories of her dark past, and those memories began to reawaken through the sighting of her brother. Despite Tenma's best efforts to protect Nina from Johan's bait and save the lives of the innocent, he couldn't do both. Cruelty would follow wherever Johan would go, as those involved with his sister or anybody knowing of his youth were to be erased. Nina getting pulled into this conflict was inevitable, from the cryptic emails to Johan's declaration to return from years ago, but what set her off was the murder of her parents. Both her and Tenma now drifters in the pursuit of Johan, and yet aligning themselves with the same goal of ending his life. It's a twisted journey, because even with the end goal in mind, they didn't want each other to be the one to do it. At this point, their stories, while entangled to the very end, would set off in different directions. One of the narrative aspects I love about this story is how every notable encounter serves a purpose. The story could manage to pull away to different POVs, and no matter what was going on, it would always lead to meaningful exchanges that would speak to these characters on a deeper level, considering their ongoing pursuit. At one point, you had Tenma training with a former French soldier named Hugo and a young Burmese girl that the soldier took in after killing her mother in war. At the same time, Nina pursues her own mission for revenge, attempting to involve a former hitman named Rosso in her own training, though himself leaving that life behind him long ago. Through each of these stories, you find yourself impressed with the character writing for these people who conducted so much violence throughout their life, but were able to find some form of peace for the rest of their days. Life is precious, and the weight of the burden those may carry from taking it is not meant for the weak or those who lack conviction to see their actions through. A quote that really put things in perspective coming from Rosso when talking about the pursuit of killing being killing's easier than you think, you just have to forget the taste of sugar. When we see so many tragedies occur in reality, you tend to ask yourself, how could anybody do such a thing? But that quote tells you that people can forget about what made them human in the first place. What caused him to give up the hitman life wasn't something so grand, but rather just witnessing somebody sharing a similar trait that he has. A man that would have been killed, and yet both of them liked putting 5 cubes of sugar in their coffee. It sounds silly out loud when you perceive it as just a basic action, but in that moment he remembered the sweet taste of sugar, or rather, he remembered the simple pleasures that can be had in life that he gradually became devoid of. The ability to connect, to empathize, is one of humanity's greatest qualities, as when we understand each other or can relate, we find ourselves not being so much different from each other after all. These people may have regrets, and although they can't wash away their sins, here they are still connecting with other people. All of this display of humanity and the importance of one having it just kept furthering the major question at hand. What happened to Johan? Because nobody is exactly born this evil. They are taught, instructed, or programmed, and out of the 3, something far worse was at play. As funny as this may come off, there is a good reason why game series such as FNAF and Poppy's Playtime has been so successful outside of their mechanics. Both stories greatly focused on the mystery surrounding the origin. What happened? Who was involved? What event let the monster out? This level of curiosity within the series all pointed to an institution known as 511 Kinderheim. For those who knew of it, the mere mention of it would cause a person to hesitate, and learning about the truth of its purpose was nothing short of unsettling. It's important to note that Monster has events that take place before the Berlin Wall fell, such as Kinderheim, while the story itself primarily takes place after. 511 was a special facility with the goal of programming children, or in fancier terms, re-educating them to be perfect soldiers at the disposal of the government. Any type of inhumane treatment you could imagine was going on at this facility. Brainwashing, desensitization, hypnosis, all of it were just methods towards stripping these children of their identity. Yet with identity being integral to one's humanity, the removal of it can have layers of consequences. It is because people can come to understand their value and purpose that it allows them to stay afloat and essentially live life within their own parameters. Yet when one is left hollow and devoid of the natural emotions one should have, especially as a child, it leaves room for something far more sinister to grow and fill that void, being your own monster. Kinderheim instilled nothing but darkness into those orphans, or at least it tried to, and yet beyond that darkness, Johan continued to stare deeper into that abyss. A major question he once asked was that of what would be the ultimate fear. I've seen many different interpretations of what this truly could be, and I believe that the monster inside Johan that made its way to the surface could also be up for discussion, as well as his philosophy about the end. It goes without saying that putting together the pieces of the puzzle was never going to be easy, nor would it be some form of easily digestible truth. It helped that the story also included other Kinderheim survivors, with some making it out better than others. The introduction of Dieter was an addition to Tenma's journey that I came to really appreciate as the story goes on. As I said before, the facility tried to instill nothing but darkness, but when Kinderheim was abandoned, not all of the experiments were completed either. As to Kinderheim's message of tomorrow is darkness, Tenma opposed that view with tomorrow will be a good day. A simple sentence, yet so powerful in a child's view, and it is because Dieter was able to hold on to his dream of playing soccer that he was able to be saved. At the same time, it was Dieter who made sure Tenma would not cross that line, for he knew a good person should not shed blood. You also have people like Grimmer, who is one of the best supporting characters in the series, who while clearly still having good inside of him, could not feel emotions. A former spy turned journalist, also looking into his past with Kinderheim, and unlike Johan, who walks hand in hand with his monster, Grimmer's is split with a hero known as the Magnificent Steiner, someone who was also born from that little piece of light held onto while at Kinderheim. From all the characters you come to meet, whether they be victims or conspirators, all of their stories were pages that would collectively complete a book of truth in which Tenma and Nina will be adding to along their journey. Understanding the nightmare that was Kinderheim ensured they wouldn't turn a blind eye to the result of it, and continuing down this road would only lead to more conflict. Conflict orchestrated by Johan that would stop at nothing to involve both the innocent and the guilty when it came to his goals. I think it's pretty understandable to say that the cast of this story are connected in a large, complicated web. Whether it be because of Tenma, Nina, or Johan, one by one, these characters became involved in this situation to different extents. From all locations and people we meet, you can't help but cherish each interaction, knowing that it could very well be a character's last. Among all the content, my favorite stretch is undoubtedly the Munich arc. Again, the story's ability to take a break away from Tenma and Nina and use that time to establish new characters such as Carl and Lotte was one of its strong points. We found ourselves in a new type of family tragedy in which Hans-Georg Schuwald, a prominent figure in the Bavarian business community, would soon be reunited with his long-lost son. The beauty of reuniting would lead them to be ignorant as a bigger plot was in motion. Johan's goals can be split into two parts, with the first being the last one alive at the end of the world. It's already proven that he is more than capable of manipulating people to create chaos and death, but to take that to a larger scale would be nothing short of child's play to him. With the possibility of getting involved into politics and instigating war, his first step was to come into some form of power, or rather steal it. Schuwald's legacy would be so powerful in the wrong hands, and from empathizing with Carl to befriending him and then aiding in the father and son reunion, it was sinister to see all these developments take place without a hint of malice detected. At this point of the story, Tenma and Nina are well on their way to confront him once more, getting wind of his current residence, and there are also a heap of new characters that aid in this effort. Psychological professionals like Julius and Rudy being two more supporting characters that I loved in the series, and Inspector Lunge forever on the prowl as he closes in on the fact that Johan just might be the ghost he's been searching for. It's as if you are watching this uncontrollable whirlwind encapsulate those in its path, and in its absence leave nothing but destruction. My favorite episode from this section, to I'm sure nobody's surprise, is number 38, The Demon in My Eyes. A confrontation can bring about many things, from a powerful exchange to a battle when two sides cannot back down from their ideals. Yet in this episode, we arrive at arguably one of the most intense moments this story has to offer. In the midst of scorching chaos, Tenma has Johan in his sights, there's no distraction or authorities, and the opportunity to bring this nightmare to an end is right in front of him. To add on, Johan slowly walks towards him with a taunt that's so nasty I couldn't help but yell peak fiction at the top of my lungs. A single finger pointing to the same location on his forehead that the original bullet hit him in years ago. In this moment, Johan is daring Tenma to prove that he is right, to prove that only humans are equal in death and that Tenma is a man that could be corrupted with the right buttons pressed. These days, the anime community loves to argue about tension and stakes within a series, and this moment right here presents both incredibly well, as there is as much to gain as there is to lose between the two. Monster is a very personal story dealing with all sorts of the highs and lows when it comes to one's humanity and what happens when you cross that line. The result, Tenma cannot go through with it, as the hesitation that has been weighing on him continues to hold him back once more. I think a key aspect that contributes to the overall enjoyment of this story is that in the grand scheme, what's important isn't something physical. This chase, this long and exhausting battle is one of ideals and conviction. Who can prove who's wrong first? Whose ideals will stand triumphant when the whirlwind has finally stopped? Seeing how far these characters would go in order to eventually bring this all to an end is what makes this such a good journey. From all the arcs filled with emotions and continuing introductions of just characters who get caught up in all of this like Detective Sook, it was hard to not keep on edge as anything says or goes when trying to hunt a monster. Munich didn't conclude without something of importance to be learned in terms of the endgame, with Tenma first learning that the twins' mother is alive, which would play into the epilogue. At the same time, it was Johan who truly left with a mindset that influenced a new plan, one that would take advantage of his feats at Kinderheim and ultimately bring about what can be described as the perfect suicide. The psychological trauma done to Nina and Johan each had their ways of returning to the surface. Whether it was visiting a certain place or remembering certain phrases, triggers are ways to recall what you have forgotten. Nina's whole journey, on top of wanting to stop her brother, was about remembering. It bothered her greatly to not remember, and Johan followed up in his own unexpected way. In episode 33, we see Johan look at a book and shortly after has a bit of a meltdown and passes out. Come to find out that in episode 37, as read out by Nina, that book was known to be called The Monster with No Name and was written by the man responsible for so much pain inflicted upon their origin, Franz Bonaparte. The significance of this book when looking at Johan is that his very existence is in tune with the main character of the story, a monster that would go from body to body, or in this case house to house, consuming each resident from the inside out, or in this case killing those residents and continuing that path. Down to his very name, his existence would be considered fictional, and by definition, fiction doesn't exist. The perfect suicide was his final plan in which he would depart from this world without leaving any evidence of his existence. It's a final decision that was passively already put in motion, considering those who played a part in his origin at Kinderheim were either killed or dying already, but this last hurrah took on a familiar form. See, Kinderheim didn't just come down on its own, it was Johan who orchestrated its downfall, as Quarrel is a perfect tool to use for instigation and conflict. That same incident occurring once more in the remote village of Ruinheim, where Franz Bonaparte is also living out his final days. It's a pretty cliche trope for the creation to come rid the world of their creator, and while not nearly as petty about Bonaparte specifically, Johan involved the entire town in another senseless massacre. Piece by piece, odd things were happening as if he were placing human lives on a chessboard and using their anxiety to his advantage. It sounds insane to be able to convince an entire town to start harming each other, but we have seen time and time again how easy it is for conflict to arise over almost anything. It's that type of flaw that also makes us human. In this final act, the emotions ran high, from the citizens of the town to our characters we've come to love. Rimmer's death, Lunge and Roberto duking it out, Tenma and Nina arriving and finally coming face to face with Bonaparte, all of it happening because Johan added fuel to this fire. He couldn't have prevented the hospital massacres, he hesitated when it came to the events at Munich, but right here is when it all matters. Even in the climax, that hesitation still held true onto Tenma's ideals as firm as Tenma held weapon in hand. Yet this time, this isn't a situation Johan plans to walk away from. His end is here, but before the dust settles, he will do everything to prove his philosophy right, even if it meant spilling the blood of an innocent young boy. In a crucial standoff, Tenma and Johan stood in sync within the view of the doomsday. It is because Tenma has been pushed this far that it can be thought of that this was going to be the one time he was going to shoot. Despite everything those who he has saved said to him, despite the pleas from Nina, Julius, and Rudy to not go down that road, this last standoff could not be helped. In this crucial moment where life is once again on the line and the uncertain must become reality, the nightmare had finally been brought to an end. One thing I've come to learn from Urasawa now is that the endings of his works leave room for speculation. What brought Johan down wasn't the bullet that could have came from Tenma, but rather a desperate father trying to protect his son. Parents will always go to major lengths to protect their children, and that is something that Johan could not relate to. With the story coming full circle, we arrive once more with Tenma saving Johan's life from another bullet to the head, and once again, he succeeds. I've read up on some interesting discussion about this choice, but in my opinion, it makes sense. Tenma was never somebody who wanted to decide who lives and dies. In fact, that's the whole reason he chose to do the right thing in the beginning in the first place. Had he let Johan die or purposely mess up during surgery, even in death, Johan would have still won. To have saved him once more proved that Johan had it wrong, that he didn't have humanity all figured out in comparison to his nihilistic views. And yet, despite all the damage done, all these characters managed to move on with their lives. This chase was never the situation that would determine how the rest of their lives would go, and a lot of them found a new purpose beyond the nightmare. Nina graduated, Dieter finally begins his dream of soccer, Ava managed to heal and become her own boss, and for Tenma, he was able to pursue the type of work that would let him stay true to his very oath. While conclusive for many characters, Johan's ending is somewhat up in the air for what happened to him. We see in the finale that the two have one more conversation about what really happened the day a subject for the Red Rose Mansion was given away. It proved that deep down, Johan was confused and angry about what happened, and that the right answer would have been for his mother to give neither sibling away that day. This final bit reminded me of the conversation Johan had with the younger boy he almost pushed over the edge. Just remembering the dialogue with mentioning that the boy's mother didn't care about him almost can come off as projecting his own anger. Motherly love is irreplaceable. It's why all these couples paid the price for trying to be their parents. To be unsure if his mother loved him led to such despair, and with no help from his time at Kinderheim, we landed at what would become this very story. Before we knew it, we see an empty hospital bed and assumingly Johan escaped. We have to remember that there were other characters that had a life of violence, but if they could find peace, then perhaps even for somebody like Johan, it would be possible as well. The message of moving forward beyond the darkness was constantly present, and it was never exclusive to one side. Monster is a series that upon completing it, I had the thought that they don't make anime like this anymore. I consume so much all year long, but I find myself appreciating a lot of older series within the mix of new, as it shows just how much has changed over the years. I'm glad I sat down and took time to watch this, and I understand why it's held in such high regard to this day. I'm not saying that this is the greatest series of all time, but this is a story worth the title of classic, and whether it be months or years down the line, I know I won't be the last person to talk about Monster, and I think that's the beauty of it all. To withstand the test of time with the bar for the medium constantly being raised is not awarded to just anything, but one thing for sure is that this series definitely has my vote. With that, ladies and gentlemen, will bring me to the end of this video. If you made it this far, thank you for watching me yap so much about this story. I know this was different, but hopefully this won't be the last time I do something like this, and of course, your feedback and viewership is always greatly appreciated. As always, make sure to leave all your thoughts in the comment section down below, and with that, stay safe out there, and I'll see you all next time.